A few months ago, I walked into a small, bustling Italian restaurant. The air smelled like fresh garlic and warm bread, and the entire restaurant was dimly lit by tea candles scattered across the tables. But I was not there for the food. Rather, I was there on a mission to conduct an ethnographic project, which is a fancy way of saying I was watching people with a clipboard in hand. This particular restaurant was well known for its live music performances, and I was there to observe just that. The restaurant was hosting a jazz trio that night, and I thought that this would be perfect for my school project. I had my hypothesis ready. I expected to see a direct correlation. Fast tempo leads to faster eating and service, while a slow tempo leads to more wine sales and prolonged dining experiences. You know, cause and effect. It's easy and it's predictable. I was fully expecting to observe what I had hypothesized, take it at face value, and leave. I sat down and watched the jazz trio perform. Piano, double bass, and drums. They played together seamlessly. Each dynamic shift or tempo change done by one member was immediately heard and matched by the next. To them, it was effortless. I sat down and watched the jazz trio perform. During their break, I decided to conduct my interview, asking about their experiences performing in front of a restaurant setting. As a classical musician myself, I decided to ask out of curiosity, so, what does your music look like? The band members looked puzzled at this. You want our sheet music? They asked me. I nodded. I want to know how you plan your music out in advance. And they just laughed. We don't use sheet music. I was confused, but I just watched you guys play for 45 minutes. You all stopped and started at the exact same time. You changed tempo together. How do you do that without a plan? The drummer leaned in and said, we don't plan. We get a general idea of what notes sound good together and play whatever we want. Sometimes, one of us will start playing random notes and the others will get a feel for it and join in. This moment stopped me in my tracks. I went in looking for predictability, for perfectly arranged sheet music that gives you the comfort of knowing you have planned it all out. Instead, I found something much more powerful. See, we love predictability, don't we? We want to know the syllabus on the first day of class. We want to know which sports teams are going to win. We want to know what we're going to be like in 5 years. It's comfortable and it's routine. But that jazz trio I saw, they were thriving in the exact opposite environment. They were building something coherent, something beautiful out of spontaneous sound and total uncertainty. And it made me ask a question that I want to explore here today. How do these jazz musicians find order in all that unpredictability? And more importantly, how can we? To understand how we are able to improvise so well, we have to take a look at the brain. Neuroscience tells us that the brain is essentially a prediction machine. We are constantly engaging in what is called predictive processing. Predictive processing is a neurological theory suggesting that our brains generate reality by constantly predicting it. Based on our past experiences, the brain makes a top-down prediction of what is about to happen, and it uses your senses to confirm it. Think about it. When you hear a familiar song, you aren't just listening to the notes in the present. Your brain is filling in the gap of the next note before it even happens. We crave pattern recognition. We crave the known. We use predictive processing so often, it does not register when our predictions are correct. You open the door to your bedroom and you see your bed. You're not really thinking about that. You know it's there. So, when we face the unknown, or when the plan falls apart, our brains actively sense it. We view uncertainty as an error, a threat. But the improviser's brain does something different. There is a fascinating study conducted by Dr. Charles Lim and Dr. Alan Brown at the National Institution of Health. They wanted to see what happens inside of the brain of a jazz musician when they switch from playing a memorized song to their own improvisation. To do this, they put professional jazz musicians inside of a functional MRI machine, a giant scanner that measures activity through blood flow in the brain. Then, they gave them a specialized plastic keyboard to play on. First, they asked the subjects to play a piece they had overlearned, a musical scale. If the functional MRI showed areas of the brain lighting up, it meant they were being put to work. So, during the memorized scale, an area of the brain called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex lit up. This is the part of the brain that sits right behind your forehead. It is responsible for planning, complex problem solving, and high-level decision making. It is the inner critic in your head that asks, am I doing this right? Is this following the rules? After seeing this, Dr. Lim asked the musicians to switch. He told them to take the memorized scale and to improvise, to put their own spin on it, to play whatever came to mind. Now, my mindset when initially reading Dr. Lim's study was that improvisation is objectively harder, right? It requires more complex problem solving, so I expected the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex to light up like a Christmas tree. But the data from this study showed the exact opposite. When the musicians began to improvise, the brain's inner critic went dark. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex deactivated. Essentially, one of the most important decision-making centers in the brain was sleeping, while another area lit up. This area is called the medial prefrontal cortex, and it is the center of autobiography, self-expression, and storytelling. In this scenario, it is the creator. So, scientifically speaking, what is improvisation? It isn't just making things up. It is the biological act of silencing the inner critic so that the action taker and creator can take over. During periods of intense improvisation, the brain's inner critic decreases in activity and self-expressive neurological pathways take over. This unique brain state, where the critic shuts down and the creative center wakes up, allows us to enter what is essentially a flow state, according to Dr. Csikszentmihalyi. Decisions pour out, and the idea of overthinking gets thrown out the window. But here is the catch. Flow really only happens when we engage with uncertainty. If a task is too predictable, we get bored. If it's too chaotic and we resist it, we get anxious. But there is a spot in the middle where we have just enough skill to meet the chaos, and that is where our ability to adapt shines. When we enter this state, the brain releases a potent cocktail of neurochemicals such as norepinephrine, dopamine, and endorphins, which help improve the mood. This is why the jazz trio I saw in that restaurant that day looked so calm yet so electric. They weren't fighting the chaos, they were riding with it. And this idea had me wondering, if this state is so powerful, why is it so hard for us to access in our daily lives? The problem is, we are culturally wired to view chaos as a failure of planning. In our modern lives, we treat uncertainty like a nuisance every time. The project timeline changes, the conversation takes an awkward turn, the career path doesn't look like our 5-year plan. Our brain's inner critic is firing at us, telling us to fix it immediately. But the jazz musician teaches us a different way to view the world. To an improviser, chaos isn't noise. It's information. There's a famous story about the jazz legend Miles Davis. He was playing a gig with the pianist Herbie Hancock. In the middle of a beautiful solo, Herbie Hancock hit a chord that was dead wrong. It was clunky, it was dissonant, it was a disaster. Herbie flinched. He judged the chaos. But Miles Davis didn't judge the note. He didn't stop. He played his next few notes around Herbie's mistake, making that wrong chord sound like it was exactly where the song was supposed to go. It was after that where he famously quoted, "It's not the note you play that's the wrong note. It's the note you play afterwards that makes it right or wrong." And this is the secret to adaptation. Meaning isn't something you find in a perfect plan. Meaning is something that you create when you stop fighting with the reality of the moment and start playing with it. Now, I want to take you back to that Italian restaurant one last time. After the set was over, the band had packed up. The candles had burned down to nothing, and the smell of garlic had faded into the air. I looked down at my clipboard. My data was messy. My result about the tempo predicting the diner's behavior was enough for my school project. But as I walked out into the cool night air, I realized I had found something much better than a confirmed hypothesis. We spend so much of our lives worried that we don't have the sheet music for what comes next. We worry about the next year, the next month, and even the next day. We stay stuck in our prefrontal cortex, analyzing every possible future, terrified of hitting a wrong note. But it doesn't have to be this way. So tomorrow, when the world plays a note you didn't expect, a dissonant chord, a sudden change in tempo, or the plan just falls apart, don't freeze. Just remember that the science of flow and the art of adaptation teaches us a liberating truth. Uncertainty is not the enemy of meaning. It is the origin of it. Thank you.